Trump tried to shut it down before it started. But Arnold didn't need permission. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even step on stage. And yet, in less than a minute, the room stopped breathing. This wasn't a debate. This was a recalibration of who actually owns the microphone in modern politics. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The ballroom was already full, shoulder to shoulder, airtight, lit like a debate stage but pulsing like a rally. Rows of donor tables gleamed under bright halogen strips, each place setting wrapped in a flag-colored napkin, each seat filled with a man in a suit or a woman in pearls. Cameras were mounted high and low. One, marked Cameras 3, was set off-center, near the back corner where staffers milled quietly. It wasn't pointed at the podium. Not yet. The announcer's voice crackled overhead like a sports broadcast. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump." The room detonated with applause. People stood. Some whistled. The red, white, blue LED strips behind the stage flickered to full brightness. Trump walked in slow, arm raised, 2 fingers tapping the air like he was adjusting the volume of the moment. He took the stage alone, no entourage. Just him and the microphone. That was the point. He grinned, took in the crowd like a veteran checking his lines of fire, then leaned into the mic with the looseness of a man who already believed he owned the evening. "Great to see Texas turning out the way it always does," he said. "Packed house. Standing room only. And no electric vehicles in the parking lot, thank God." The audience laughed. He held the pause. Just enough for the timing. "They say EVs are the future. I say, if I can outwalk your car, it's not a revolution." Laughter again. This was his rhythm: ridicule first, policy second. Control the room before you even name the topic. He was about to pivot, eyes narrowing, lips poised for the next jab. But then, a beat of silence. Not awkward. Not technical. Intentional. But misplaced. The pause wasn't his. The laugh track faltered. Trump's eyes moved, not toward the press pit or the front row, but stage right. Cameras 3 panned independently. Smooth, deliberate, like it had sensed movement where it shouldn't be. And there he was. A tall man, alone. Standing just inside the entrance corridor near the sidewall, in a charcoal jacket, no name tag, no handler. Not moving forward. Not waving. Just standing. Some of the crowd didn't recognize him at first. A few squinted. Then someone whispered near the press rail, "Wait, that's Schwarzenegger." Trump heard it. Didn't move yet. The crowd didn't cheer. Didn't boo. But they did stop. It lasted 3 seconds. Long enough to feel like a glitch in a broadcast. Long enough for camera 3 to zoom and reframe, bringing Arnold's profile into sharp definition while Trump was still mid-stage. Trump's jaw shifted. Smile. Gone. No words for a beat. Just muscle tension. Then, "Is this some kind of joke?" No answer. He turned, still facing the crowd, but voice cutting sideways. "Security." He didn't shout. Didn't need to. The words snapped like a baton being drawn. 2 men in black moved immediately from the wall near the exit doors. Not fast, but not slow either. Coordinated. Quiet. Arnold didn't flinch. Didn't raise a hand. Didn't walk. He just stayed exactly where he was. Trump watched him, expecting motion, resistance, defiance, anything. What he got instead was a room that didn't know what to do with its own stillness. A young woman seated in row 4 lowered her phone slightly. She wasn't live streaming anymore. She was watching. The audio feed hadn't cut, but nothing was being said. Trump's mic stayed live. The red light on camera 3 stayed locked. Arnold hadn't said a word. But the stage had already shifted. Not physically, but perceptually. The applause hadn't resumed. The jokes hadn't landed. And Trump, for the first time in the evening, was no longer the one who dictated what the crowd looked at. The room didn't belong to Arnold. Not yet. But it didn't entirely belong to Trump anymore either. Power hadn't been taken. But it had been interrupted. And in the age of cameras, interruption is its own kind of message. The two security agents moved with precision, trained, calm, eyes forward, trajectory tight. They weren't rushing. That would have made it feel like a threat. No, this was more procedural. Just an extraction. One moved slightly ahead of the other. His right hand, open-palmed, hovered a few inches from Arnold's shoulder. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The audience was still adjusting. Some in the middle rows leaned forward. Phones were still raised, but now angled, reframing away from the podium and toward the side aisle, where something off-script was happening. Arnold stood with both feet flat, arms relaxed at his sides. His body language didn't defy anything. He simply didn't move. The first agent reached him. His hand extended, 2 fingers brushing the crease of Arnold's jacket at the shoulder seam. That was the moment. The exact one. Arnold turned his head, not fast, not defensive, just enough to meet the man's eyes. He looked up. Not down. Not away. Just up. Steady. Controlled. Like someone who had nothing to win and nothing to fear. His brow didn't furrow. His jaw didn't tense. He didn't lean back or brace. The agent paused. It wasn't fear. It was recognition of something unspoken, a kind of stillness you don't train for. A quiet authority that couldn't be dismissed as bravado. He retracted his hand. No words had been exchanged. But the motion died there. The second agent, still 2 steps behind, caught the hesitation and slowed. He shifted his eyes, first to Arnold, then to the first man, then up toward the dais. Awaiting further signal. None came. Trump hadn't moved. His face was tight, unreadable. His right hand still hovered near the mic, fingers clenched. But his eyes were tracking something else now. Because the third camera, CM3, was no longer cutting between frames. It had locked. Tight. A slow push-in. Center frame, Arnold's face. No slogans. No gestures. No performance. Just a man standing where he wasn't expected, staring calmly into the eyes of someone who had been told to remove him. In row 5, a young woman held her phone upright, still live streaming. Her screen showed the moment the agent stopped. Then, as the camera feed zoomed in, her image feed on the phone matched it. Arnold's eyes, large, steady, calm. She didn't lower the phone out of fear. She didn't look away out of principle. She just blinked. Once. Then her hand drifted downward. The phone went dark in her lap. She exhaled. Quietly. As if the room had shifted gravitational pull. That was the moment the crowd stopped watching the stage and started observing the room. It wasn't a disruption. It wasn't a rebellion. It was something far more destabilizing. A pause that couldn't be categorized. Then, finally, Arnold spoke. Not loud. Not elevated. No performance in his posture. Just a sentence. Barely projected beyond his own chest. But the room carried it anyway. 1 minute. Then I'll leave. The mic didn't pick it up. The camera didn't need to. The air itself conducted it. No one answered. Not Trump. Not security. Not the crowd. But something happened beneath the surface. Something small, invisible, irreversible. A man had walked into a room where he didn't belong. Had been told to leave. And then, with neither resistance nor apology, had held that room in place, with nothing but eye contact and stillness. No one clapped. No one yelled. That would come later. Right now, the duel wasn't in words. It was in inertia. Who would move first? Who would speak next? Who still believed they were in control? Trump tilted his head, not out of curiosity, but calculation. He scanned the crowd. Some eyes met his. Some didn't. He didn't speak. The agents remained still. The cameras didn't cut away. And Arnold? He stayed exactly where he was. Not as a challenge, but as a presence. The pause was still stretching. Trump hadn't moved. His weight had shifted to one side, the familiar lean he used before making a punchline, except now, there was no laughter to ride on. Arnold's sentence, "1 minute, then I'll leave," was still echoing in the gaps between murmurs. Not because it was loud, but because it was the only thing that hadn't been dismissed. The security guards hadn't advanced. The stage manager hadn't spoken into his mic. So Trump did what he always did when the room slipped out of rhythm. He pushed back. He leaned in toward the MC, not fast, not theatrical, just enough to pull it closer. The crowd instinctively looked forward. Reflex. Muscle memory. The man at the podium was speaking again. He lowered his voice slightly, tightened the vowel. "This is my stage." Short. Controlled. Like a teacher addressing a student who had gone too far. Like a CEO reasserting meeting authority. Then he stepped forward. It wasn't dramatic. Just a single stride toward the edge of the dais. But it was loaded with intention. His right hand lifted, not fully extended, just hovering near the microphone. As if preparing to reclaim space. To realign the room. But he didn't account for the ripple. Row 12. Far left. A single clap. Sharp. Clean. Out of sync. Loud enough to pierce the silence, not enough to claim it. It hung. Awkward. Then, 2 more claps, diagonally across in row 9. Then 5. Then 11. The rhythm wasn't applause. It wasn't celebration. It was something stranger, affirmation without consensus. It didn't roll like thunder. It stuttered, spread, paused, resumed. Trump's mouth opened slightly. His hand, still midair, remained suspended, between gesture and retreat. He wasn't being booed. He wasn't being heckled. Worse, he was being gently overwritten. In row 3, an elderly man stood slowly. Grey jacket, bolo tie, slight limp. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a fist. He just spoke, calm, gravel in his voice. He said he'll leave after a minute. A few heads turned. Someone whispered, "That's Gerald, he's on the Ranchers' Council." Gerald didn't sit back down. He looked toward the dais. Not at Trump. At the light above the podium. Then, back to Arnold. A younger man, 2 rows behind, military haircut, jacket with a Veterans for Accountability patch, spoke next. "I don't agree with him. But he earned his right to speak. 1 minute." The clap returned. This time, in clusters. Not uniform. Not organized. But enough. Enough to block the moment. Enough to stall the reclaiming of the stage. Trump's hand lowered, slowly. Not in surrender, but recalibration. He took a half step back from the podium. His eyes scanned left, then right, looking for someone, anyone, to anchor to. Melinda from Women for Prosperity, in the second row, looked down at her notes. Frank Lynn, logistics chair, was staring at the carpet. The room wasn't hostile. It was non-compliant. Trump cleared his throat. A small tick. Audible. "Caught on MIC, we don't do interruptions here," he said. But the sentence felt like an afterthought. It didn't reset the tone. It didn't restore hierarchy. Because the cameras, especially CAM3, were no longer fixed on the podium. They were focused elsewhere. On the aisle. On Arnold, still standing with his arms folded gently in front of him. Still unmoving. Still present. Still not speaking. Because the most disruptive thing in that room wasn't a protest. It wasn't volume. It was the fact that someone refused to disappear. The veteran sat down. Gerald remained standing. Trump looked at the MIC again, then stepped away entirely. He moved back behind the line of shadow cast by the downstage lighting. Just an inch. But symbolic. For the first time in 15 minutes, the man who had walked in without a badge was now in the room longer than expected, and the one who had opened the summit was no longer leading it. It wasn't a takeover. It was something quieter. More dangerous. The illusion of permission had cracked. The air hadn't cleared. Trump had stepped back, but not down. The applause had faded, but the echo of it hung over the stage like a light someone forgot to turn off. Security remained frozen. Cameras didn't pan. No moderator interrupted. It was now Arnold's moment to speak, yet he didn't. He moved. One deliberate step forward. Not toward the podium, but toward the edge of the stage, the intersection where guest and host, sanctioned and unsanctioned, converged. The sound of his shoes against the floor, leather, weight-bearing, measured, was the only thing breaking the silence. He didn't look at Trump. He didn't look at the audience. He looked at the microphone, and then deliberately stepped around it. He stood next to it. Not behind it. A man not asking to speak, but preparing to leave a record. From the inside of his jacket, chest level, left side, he reached in. No flourish. No folder. Just his hand and a folded object. He pulled out a single sheet of paper, creased once, twice, then again. Worn at the edges. The kind of wear that doesn't come from being carried for days, but for decades. His fingers unfolded it carefully, like habit. Not for dramatics, but with reverence. He looked at it once, nodded slightly, then placed it flat on the wood surface of the MIC stand. Not in the center. Off to the side. Not to display, but to leave. The room didn't understand what it was at first. The text wasn't visible from the back. The lighting made the paper shimmer too much to read. But the camera saw it. Camera 3 dipped, just enough for the wide lens to catch the typeface. And camera 2, likely reacting to a director's whisper in the earpiece, zoomed low and slow. The shot came in tight, angled just beneath the MIC's arc, until the letters U.S. Marine Enlistment Record 1983 were legible. Below it, a name in block print, Schwarzenegger, Arnold top right corner, a faded blue fingerprint. No one spoke. Arnold didn't tap the page. Didn't hold it up. Didn't explain it. He didn't need to. He looked up, not at Trump, but across the rows. Scanning the audience like a man reading a room for signals, not applause. Then, finally, he spoke. Some of us didn't inherit the room. He let it sit. We earned our place in it. He didn't elaborate. There was no partisan shot. No ideological swipe. He said it like someone recalling not just a memory, but a truth he had waited years to say in a room like this, without needing permission to do so. The audience was still. Even Trump didn't move. He was watching. Not resisting. Watching. Because this was no longer about credentials. Not policy. Not permission. It was about the one thing that can't be performed or postured. Proof. No one could wave it off. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a story. It was a piece of recorded American bureaucracy. The kind that either exists or doesn't. The kind that comes with sacrifice and consequence. The kind no one claps for, because they don't know if they should. Arnold didn't move to reclaim the paper. He left it exactly where it sat today. Unmoving. Plain. Center frame. Then, he stepped back, half a step. And waited. He didn't ask for applause. He didn't ask for time. He had already given them what mattered. Something that couldn't be debated, deflected, or denied. A woman in row 8, mid-50s, blazer with a conservative tax group pin, brought her hands together gently. One clap. Then stopped. Not hesitant. Just quiet. A man beside her muttered, "Is that real?" She didn't answer. Because it didn't matter if it was real to him. It had already landed on camera. And the internet believes what it sees before it questions what it means. In the back, a sound tech raised his hand to his headset, whispering into his ear, "We're staying on the insert. Do not cut." Backstage, a staffer monitoring the live feed tapped the pause icon, scrubbed back 10 seconds, and froze the frame. The paper on screen. The name. The year. The silence. A visual headline without words. The kind of moment that doesn't trend because it's loud, but because it feels like evidence. The paper was still on the podium. Flat. Unclaimed. Undisputed. Arnold had stepped back, hands folded, posture relaxed, not defensive, not triumphant. Just present. Trump remained 10 feet away. Eyes on the paper, then on Arnold, then on the crowd. He hadn't spoken since Arnold's sentence. Some of us didn't inherit the room. We earned our place in it. It was too clean. Too unflappable. There was no hook to pull apart. So he went back to what he knew. Step forward. Own the moment. Say something disarming. Pivot the mood. He began to move, not quickly, but intentionally. 2 strides toward the mic. A subtle smirk began to form. His voice dropped an octave, performance tone re-engaged. Hollywood sure can act. The delivery was textbook. Classic Trumpism, casual ridicule disguised as wit, designed to split the room. He was halfway through the sentence when it happened. The lighting changed. Not all at once. Just a subtle shift. A diagonal sweep of the sidelight, repositioning itself not toward Trump, but slightly off-center, toward Arnold. Trump caught it instantly. His feet stopped mid-step. The sentence hung, unfinished. The audience didn't laugh. They didn't boo either. They simply didn't follow. It wasn't that the joke didn't land. It's that the room had stopped taking cues from him. In the wings, barely visible from the floor, a tech in a black headset stood behind the curtain, one hand on the dimmer board, the other pressed to his ear. He nodded once. The light stayed where it was. A soft, controlled glow, just enough to frame Arnold, to shift the center of visual gravity away from the podium. It wasn't dramatic. No blackout. No spotlight. Just a quiet betrayal by the architecture itself. Trump blinked. He looked up, toward the rig. Then left. Then right. Then back to the audience. And that's when the voice came. Row 7, middle block. A man in his late 40s. Button-down shirt. No tie. Voice firm. Measured. Didn't vote for him. A pause. Still, respect. It wasn't shouted. It was offered. Trump turned his head slightly in the man's direction. The smirk was gone now, replaced by that familiar tightening of the mouth, the micro-expression that sat somewhere between disbelief and restraint. There was no clap. No rising support. Just that one voice. And the lighting that refused to move back. Trump adjusted his stance. Cleared his throat. Hands loosely clasped in front of him, not a typical posture. Too contained. Too narrow. He glanced at the mic again. Then took another half step toward it. As if to reclaim it. As if to finish the joke. As if to reframe the moment. But it was too late. Camera 2 hadn't followed him. The frame hadn't shifted. The director hadn't cued the switch. The camera lens, still mid-shot, remained on Arnold, hands still folded, eyes watching the center aisle, like a guest waiting for his name to be called. Trump was speaking, but the frame had moved on. That was the moment that mattered. Because on live broadcast, what isn't filmed might as well not exist. And in this case, the joke wasn't just flat. It was invisible. A few murmurs stirred in the back rows, uncertain, unsynchronized. A woman in row 2 looked at her husband, then at the stage. He shrugged. He wasn't sure if Trump had finished his sentence or just given up on it. The podium, in full light. The paper, still unmoved. The challenger, illuminated. The host, dimmed. Not fully. Not humiliatingly. But symbolically. And in politics, symbolism is always louder than volume. Trump didn't retreat, but he didn't advance either. He hovered, physically center stage, but narratively off-axis. He looked again to the side curtain. The tech didn't move. Didn't blink. Because the light was already decided. Because the show was no longer his to direct. The lights stayed where they were. Trump hadn't left the stage. But the stage had clearly left him. He stood still, one hand brushing the edge of the podium, the other half curled into his palm. There was no line to deliver, no applause to cue. The paper remained on the podium's right lip, untouched. The room hadn't moved since Arnold's last words. Neither had Arnold. Then, without prompting, no cue, no music, no director's hand, Arnold turned away. He didn't look back at the mic, didn't reach for the document. Didn't nod at the crowd or give any dramatic pause. He simply stepped down from the edge of the platform, the same way he had stepped into the room, quietly. The cameras tracked him, not with urgency, but with a strange precision, as though the operator knew this was the exit that mattered. The audio feed remained live, but no one spoke. There was only the sound of a shoe scuff on carpet. And then the subtle click of a lens resetting its focus. Arnold passed row 6. Then 5. His shoulders squared. His hands loose at his side. No wave. No glance at Trump. Just movement. In row 9, a young man with a crew cut and a phone in his hand had been recording. His thumb hovered over the screen as Arnold approached. He lowered the phone, instinctively, like someone expecting to be spoken to. But Arnold didn't speak. He didn't acknowledge the camera. He just kept walking. That's when it happened. The young man inhaled sharply. His eyes tracked Arnold for a second longer, then drifted to the podium. He whispered, just loud enough to be picked up by some two-directional MIC, but not loud enough for the room. Not for performance. Not for drama. Thank you. Not aimed at Arnold directly. Not shouted. It landed in the air like breath-fogging glass. His hand, almost reflexively, touched his chest. A two-finger press. Not a salute. Not allegiance. Just contact. It wasn't performative. It felt almost accidental. But the camera caught it. And in the control room, a technician tagged the moment. Clip 6B whisper chest isolate. Arnold didn't stop. Didn't nod. Didn't break stride. The moment wasn't his. It belonged to the person who spoke without asking permission. And in the strange language of political theater, that's when the room changed hands. It wasn't Trump being challenged anymore. It wasn't about permission, or power, or protocol. It was about presence, and who the room wanted to follow without needing to be told. Arnold reached the back wall and paused, not for effect, but for navigation. He glanced once toward the emergency exit, then toward the central aisle. No staff approached. No security shadowed him. He had arrived as an anomaly. He was leaving as something else. Trump, still at the podium, finally moved. He adjusted the MIC. "Well," he said, a breath almost too low to register, "we've had our little civics lesson." Some chuckles from the front row, loyalists desperate to return to format. But the timing was off. The laughs came too soon, or too late, or not at all. Because the tension had already broken. And not in his favor. Arnold had exited. No spotlight. No security escort. No handshake. He had stepped through the side corridor, disappearing past the curtain with the same posture he entered with, spine straight, face unarmed, jacket unbuttoned. And yet, the room was still thinking about him. Not because of what he said. Because of what the room had done in response. At the podium, Trump adjusted the MIC a second time. He cleared his throat again, not for effect, but as a placeholder. "Now," he said, forcing a smile. "Let's get back to what really matters, fixing the country." A few nods. Some polite claps. Row 3. Row 1. The usual suspects. But something was off. Not hostile. Not rebellious. Just misaligned. The air in the room didn't reset. The rhythm didn't return. Trump continued, policy lines, border figures, GDP stats, familiar jabs at blue states. But none of it caught traction. In the far corner, a reporter refreshed his phone. The TikTok clip was already up. 10,400 views. Caption: "He didn't raise his voice." But the room stopped breathing anyway. Another post showed the folded paper on the podium. Frame locked. No voiceover. Just ambient sound. Looping silently. 500,000 views. No trending hashtags yet. But enough comments to shift the momentum. "I never thought I'd respect a guy like that." That's what showing up looks like. Didn't vote for him. Still, respect. The phrase had started repeating. Not as a movement. Just as a residue. Unstage, Trump kept reading. But the cameras had shifted logic. Cam 1, fixed. Cam 2, wide shot, crowd, not the dais. Cam 3, low angle, podium edge, still catching the edge of the folded paper Arnold had left behind. No one had removed it. And in the control room, no one had cut to a clean feed. Because the frame refused to go back. It wasn't a technical failure. It was editorial gravity. No matter how many words Trump poured into the microphone, the room had already centered itself elsewhere. And everyone in the room felt it. They didn't say it. They didn't rise up. But they weren't leaning forward anymore. In row 5, the young woman who had live-streamed earlier didn't start a new clip. She sat still, arms crossed, watching. In row 9, the veteran who had whispered thank you now stared at the paper. He wasn't filming either. He was just watching it not be moved. Unstage, Trump exhaled through his nose. Subtle. Frustrated. Then came the final breach. Middle block, row 6. A voice. Not loud. Not rude. Not even interrupting. Just asking. Are you going to respond to what he said? The air in the room tightened. Trump paused. Eyes scanning. The question had come from somewhere dead center, but no one stood. No one needed to. The question wasn't for attention. It was for accountability. And there was no answer. Because there wasn't a line ready. Trump leaned slightly forward, fingers gripping both edges of the podium. He had his opinion, he said. I've got mine. A few claps. Sparse. But then came a second silence. One that wasn't stage managed. One that didn't ask for permission. It just stayed. Not as a protest. Not as applause withheld. As something else, a shift that refused to unshift.